What if every war in human history, every sacred religious text, and, even every agonizing argument you've ever had with your spouse,
Right.
what if all of that wasn't actually a battle of good versus evil, but just a symptom of, well, cosmic puberty?
It is a wild concept to wrap your head around.
Totally. Welcome to our deep dive. You know that symbol you always see on vintage t-shirts or like painted on the wall of a yoga studio?
The Taiji too.
Yeah, the classic yin-yang circle, perfectly split into those swirling black and white halves with little contrasting dots. We usually look at that and think, balance, time to chill out.
Exactly. It's become this casual shorthand for just relaxing.
Right. But our mission today is to completely tear that casual assumption apart. We are unpacking some truly fascinating, highly complex source material today that positions this ubiquitous little symbol as the inescapable blueprint for reality itself.
Not just a neat design.
No, the literal engine driving everything from the Garden of Eden to the frustrations of modern life.
And it is a massive framework to digest. We are looking at a synthesis of Eastern philosophy, Western religious narratives, and this overarching concept of cosmic seasons to basically chart the entire evolution of human consciousness.
Yeah.
My objective today is to help you take these vast, almost intimidating cosmic ideas and ground them in the actual everyday friction of just trying to exist alongside other human beings.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the central premise, it really hits you right between the eyes. This philosophy argues that humanity's total obsession with good versus evil is actually a fundamental misunderstanding of how the universe operates.
A complete misread of the situation.
Yes, we treat life like a moral battlefield, but this material suggests that the entire good and evil binary was basically just a set of training wheels.
A temporary proxy.
Right? Like the universe was never actually trying to teach us how to defeat evil. It was trying to teach us how to harmonize yin and yang.
What's fascinating here is how effectively that reframes human history. I mean, we are so deeply conditioned to view reality as a zero-sum game.
Light has to conquer dark.
Right, must defeat wrong. But if you look at those binaries as a necessary fiction, like a teaching tool for a species that simply wasn't mature enough to grasp the complex mechanics of opposing forces working together, well, the entire human narrative changes.
And to really get why we needed those training wheels, we have to look at the beginning of human consciousness, which this framework calls the cosmic spring.
The infancy of humanity.
Yeah, picture the era of Adam and Eve before the apple. We typically think of that as a state of pure perfection.
Right, paradise.
But here, humanity is described as completely innocent, yet fundamentally ignorant. Like there is no science, no complex understanding of reality.
Just pure childlike innocence. In a cosmic spring, there is no conflict.
Sounds nice, honestly.
It does, but without conflict, there is zero growth. You are pure, but you are effectively clueless about the mechanics of the universe you inhabit.
You're just a baby in a cosmic rib.
Exactly. And a species cannot remain in the cradle forever. Evolution is mandatory.
And that evolutionary trigger is the forbidden fruit. Only this philosophy makes a massive pivot here.
Oh, it was a huge shift.
It wasn't the fruit of good and evil. The text argues it was actually the yin-yang fruit.
Right. And the moment that fruit is consumed, the cosmic spring abruptly ends. Humanity is violently thrust into the cosmic summer.
So if spring was our infancy,
Summer is our puberty. It is an era of intense, chaotic adolescence for the entire human race.
here's where it gets really interesting. Think about what happens to a teenager. They suddenly get a massive surge of hormones. They become hyper-aware of themselves.
Awkwardly aware, yeah.
Awkwardly, painfully aware of the opposite sex and social dynamics. By eating the fruit, humanity suddenly perceived yin and yang. We perceived fundamental opposites, but we lacked the psychological hardware to actually handle them.
We see that beautifully detailed in the elemental gender analysis applied to the Eden narrative here.
Right, they assign elements to Adam and Eve, which is so cool.
To explain the psychological mechanisms at play, the philosophy assigns these elemental properties. So Adam is fundamentally aligned with fire, and Eve is aligned with water.
And those elements dictate their internal psychology, right? Like fire is bright, illuminating, and explosive on the outside,
But it lacks substance. It is dark on the inside.
while water is the complete inverse. It can be dark and difficult to see through on the surface.
But fundamentally, it possesses internal clarity and depth.
Okay, so because of that internal clarity, women represented by Eve and the element of water are framed as more spiritually advanced and perceptive in this scenario.
Yes, water adapts, it flows, it grasps the deeper currents. Eve is the one who initiates the eating of the fruit because she perceives the unavoidable necessity of this cosmic evolution.
She sees that things have to change.
Exactly. She understands that the stasis of the spring cannot last. She takes the leap, and Adam, representing the reactive, external nature of fire, just follows her lead.
Hold on. Make sure I'm tracking the implications of this.
Okay.
Are we saying that what centuries of theology have called original sin isn't actually a sin at all?
That's the argument, yeah.
It's just the universe's most awkward puberty phase. Like, we aren't being punished for breaking a divine rule. We're just acting like moody teenagers, trying to figure out how these opposing elemental forces are supposed to coexist without burning the house down.
That is the exact paradigm shift taking place. The early stories of human conflict. The Tower of Babel collapsing, Cain and Abel turning to violence.
All the classic Sunday school disasters.
Right. These are no longer cautionary tales about inherent human wickedness. They are the inevitable symptoms of the cosmic summer.
Wow.
Humanity is suddenly wrestling with incredibly powerful opposing forces, but we completely lack the maturity to harmonize them. We only know how to clash. So we form tribes, we highlight differences, we go to war.
We were just cosmic teenagers acting out our growing pains on a global scale.
Precisely.
So the whole good versus evil narrative was genuinely just a survival mechanism, a way to keep us from annihilating ourselves while our cosmic brains develop.
It's like when you tell a kid, don't touch the stove, it's bad.
Right. You don't say that because the stove is morally evil.
No, you say it because a toddler doesn't understand thermodynamics yet, and they'll get burned.
The problem arises when you become an adult and still think the stove is evil.
Exactly. The ultimate goal isn't to keep you away from the fire forever, it's to teach you how to cook. It's to teach you how to wield the fire and the water in tandem to create something entirely new.
Okay, so if we are currently living in the tail end of this chaotic hormonal teenage phase, trying to figure out yin and yang, where is the classroom? Like, we need a controlled environment to practice this harmonization.
And the philosophy delivers a huge kind of hilarious twist here.
It really does. The ultimate training ground for mastering the universe isn't some mountaintop monastery.
No.
It's your living room. The family home is the primary crucible.
Marriage and the family unit are positioned as the most vital gateways for mastering yin and yang. Everything else is secondary to that specific relational dynamic.
I love how the source material illustrates this by gently roasting monks.
It's very direct about it.
It points out that ascetics who shave their heads and flee to the mountains aren't necessarily doing it out of supreme discipline. They're doing it because marriage is just too hard.
Yes.
There's a great little anecdote in the text about a monk who will sit in perfect silence and meticulously count an entire measure of tiny sesame seeds, one by one.
Which takes immense focus.
Right. But they do it purely to avoid the agonizing psychological difficulty of dealing with a spouse.
It is a funny image, but the underlying psychology is incredibly sound.
Hmm.
Why is marriage the ultimate spiritual boot camp? Because deeply loving someone who is fundamentally, biologically, and psychologically different from you requires the total breakdown of your own ego.
Right, because out in the real world, if you get into a massive dispute with a coworker or even a friend, you have an exit valve.
You can just walk away.
Yeah, you go home to your own space, the energy dissipates, and you cool off.
But the marital bond removes that exit valve. You are tethered together.
For better or worse, literally.
When a couple fundamentally clashes, that energetic friction has nowhere to dissipate. It just bounces off the walls of the relationship. Without the ability to simply walk away, the frustration and hatred can multiply tenfold.
You are forced into daily, unavoidable confrontation with an opposing force. It's basically like being locked in an escape room with your exact psychological opposite.
That's a great way to put it.
You can't leave. So you are faced with a very stark choice. You either have to learn to harmonize to solve the puzzle of the other person's nature, or you will create a toxic feedback loop that absolutely destroys you both.
And this raises an important question. Why does a vast cosmic philosophy place so much weight on domestic disputes?
Yeah, why do my arguments over the dishes matter to the universe?
It comes down to a concept called Yang Haptiak, the harmonious union of yin and yang. The logic here is fractal.
Meaning patterns repeating at every scale.
Right. You cannot possibly hope to be a functioning part of the broader, complex universe if you lack the psychological resilience to balance the yin and yang within your own household. It is the foundational stress test.
And it does not pull punches about failing that test. Anyone who refuses to engage with this friction, who avoids the crucible of family life because it's too difficult, is labeled a cosmic straggler.
A dropout.
Yeah, a dropout. You can't skip this grade because you're refusing to engage with the very mechanism the universe is built on.
And conversely, if you achieve balance in the home, that harmonization naturally forces a shift in your outward perspective.
How so?
You begin to realize that the skills you use to navigate the conflicting needs of your spouse are the exact same skills needed to navigate the broader world. The mastery scales up.
And to map out that outward cascade, the material references The Great Learning, which is a classic Asian philosophical text.
Yes.
And rather than just giving a list of steps, it shows a causal chain. You start by correcting your own internal mind.
And how does that internal correction lead to outward change? Because once your mind is regulated, you stop reacting defensively to your family.
You create harmony in the home.
Exactly. And once you understand how to balance the competing, often irrational needs of a family unit, you have developed the exact psychological blueprint required to govern a state.
The macro is just a larger version of the micro.
It scales all the way up to bringing peace to the entire universe.
Which brings us to the absolute pinnacle of this framework, which is tied to the philosophy of Daisen Jinryo.
A very specific esoteric tradition.
Right. It claims that when human beings finally achieve that perfect yin-yang harmony, the yin-yang haptiok, it acts as a cosmic key. It unlocks an unprecedented state called Sinin-joa, which translates to the harmonious union of God and humans.
The divine and the mortal coming together as perfectly balanced opposites?
It is the ultimate goal of human evolution, a level of existence humanity has not yet reached.
We are still aiming for it.
Okay, I have to push back here.
Go for it.
Because I follow the logic of the escape room. I get that the family is a crucible, but am I seriously supposed to believe that if I finally develop the emotional maturity to stop arguing with my partner over who left the lights on, or like what temperature the thermostat should be set at, that I am suddenly primed to merge my consciousness with the divine?
It does seem like a stretch.
That feels like an absurdly massive leap. We're talking about thermostats versus God.
It sounds absurd on its face, certainly. And if you view the universe as a hierarchy where God is at the very top and your thermostat is way down at the bottom, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the universe in this framework is not a ladder, it is a fractal. It is made of the exact same fundamental opposites at every conceivable level of reality.
Like the structure of an atom mirroring the structure of a solar system.
Precisely. Or think of a painting. You cannot have a painting without a light canvas and dark pigment.
Because without contrast, you just have a blank slate.
The interaction of those opposites is the only way an image exists. By mastering the micro-level yin-yang conflicts in your daily life, by truly understanding why your partner needs the thermostat at a different temperature, and harmonizing those competing needs without resentment.
That's the hard part, the without resentment part.
Exactly. But by doing that, you are literally decoding the fundamental building blocks of reality. Science, art, politics, domestic relationships, they are all, at their core, just yin and yang interacting.
Wow.
If you can crack the code of harmonization in your living room, you possess the cipher for the entire cosmos.
So what we perceive as petty bickering is actually us failing at cosmic math.
That is a perfect summary.
Wow. Okay. So humanity has been stuck in this messy, conflict-heavy cosmic summer, failing at the math, trying to crack the code. How does it end? Does it just go on like this indefinitely?
It doesn't. The philosophy asserts that we are currently standing on the precipice of a massive transition. The grueling heat of the summer is ending, and we are entering the cosmic autumn.
Which means humanity is finally transitioning from adolescence into adulthood.
Yes.
And this is where the philosophy looks back at modern history and completely recontextualizes our biggest global conflicts. I mean, it looks at the massive ideological struggles of the 20th century, specifically capitalism versus communism.
The friction between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat.
Right. And it views those global struggles not as a righteous war of good versus evil.
Which is how they are usually framed.
Exactly. But instead as the ultimate tragic manifestation of the cosmic summer.
Because capital and labor are fundamentally a yin-yang pair.
Right. You cannot have industrial production without mass labor, but you also cannot organize and sustain mass labor without the infrastructure of capital.
They are inextricably linked forces. They are completely dependent on one another for survival.
Yet, because humanity was still trapped in that immature, combative mindset,
It's a teenage angst.
we treated these opposing forces as enemies that needed to be annihilated. The 20th century was effectively two halves of a whole, desperately trying to commit suicide by killing their partner.
It was humanity acting out teenage growing pains on a geopolitical scale.
but armed with nuclear weapons.
Exactly. It's terrifying when you frame it that way.
But the cosmic autumn, what the text refers to as the later heaven, promises an end to that suicidal binary.
It proposes that humans will finally mature into adults who know how to wield yin and yang.
To utilize capital and labor, or fire and water, without the need to destroy the opposing force.
These future masters of harmony are called Dotong Gunja, enlightened adults.
Dorangunja.
Yes. And to give us a visual anchor for what this new human looks like, the material points to Buddhist iconography, specifically the Maitreya Buddha.
And this really stood out to me because a lot of historical depictions of enlightened beings, they show them seated, serene, eyes closed, almost entirely detached from the world.
Like they've checked out of reality.
Yeah. And sometimes they are even depicted as childlike.
But the Maitreya is fundamentally different. The Maitreya is depicted standing up, fully engaged.
Standing up.
Yes, and wearing a very specific hat or crown called guanwang.
And putting on that crown historically symbolizes a person officially stepping into adulthood.
Right. You are no longer a child playing in the cosmic sandbox. You are an adult who is now responsible for maintaining the heavy, complex duties of the universe.
It is such a profound image of taking responsibility for the cosmic balance. And there's one final, incredibly striking, esoteric image used to drive this evolutionary trajectory home.
The modified Ouroboros.
Right, the classic symbol of the snake biting its own tail. Usually that represents infinity or endless cycles.
But here it is altered into something called Sadyongmi. It is a creature that possesses the head of a snake but the tail of a dragon.
A snake head, but a dragon tail. That's such a specific visual.
Think about the trajectory that implies. Humanity begins as the snake.
Earthly.
Earthly, restricted, creeping along the ground, bound by our ignorance and our petty destructive conflicts.
But through the agonizing, necessary friction of the cosmic summer, through mastering the escape room of our relationships and scaling that harmony outward.
We evolve.
Yeah.
By the time we reach the tail end of our journey, we have transformed into a divine cosmic force. The dragon.
We don't just find balance, we literally transform our nature. What is so elegant about diving into this material is how it gathers all these disparate religious and historical threads and weaves them together.
It is remarkably cohesive.
It doesn't look at the world and say, oh, this specific religion was right all along and the rest were wrong.
No, it suggests that every tradition, whether it's the psychological metaphor of Eden's apple,
Or the developmental stages of the Great Learning.
or the iconography of the standing Maitreya, they were all just grasping at different pieces of the exact same puzzle.
They were all trying to document humanity's incredibly painful, deeply necessary transition from ignorant children to cosmic adults.
Everyone was just feeling a different part of the same elephant in a dive room.
Absolutely. Well, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started by looking at the universe through that deeply ingrained, combative lens of good versus evil, and we've seen how this framework dismantles that entirely.
It completely flips the script.
It really does. It challenges you to see reality as a necessary process of harmonizing yin and yang, a process that doesn't start in some abstract spiritual realm, but right inside your own home, before cascading out to encompass the cosmos.
It demands that we stop viewing opposing forces as enemies that must be conquered and start recognizing them as essential partners in creation.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Think about the most frustrating, entrenched conflict in your life right now. Maybe it's a toxic dynamic at the office.
Or a political divide that genuinely raises your blood pressure.
Yeah. Or maybe it's an ongoing cyclical argument right there in your living room with the person you love. What if you stopped looking at that conflict as a battle of good versus evil, where your only objective is to defeat the other side?
To win.
Right. What if you looked at it as a yin-yang puzzle? If humanity's entire history of war and strife was just an awkward teenage phase meant to teach us how to balance opposing forces, what might happen if you decided to finally graduate to adulthood today?
That is the perfect question to leave on.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We'll catch you next time.